Namaskar and best wishes for the 8th International Day of Yoga. I'm extremely happy to be a part of this initiative of Mythic Society in addressing the Memorial Endowment lecture dedicated to Professor K.T. Pandurangiji. And my topic today is Yama and Niyama guiding principles for a balanced life. When we talk about a balanced life, let's try to understand whether we live the right kind of life or not. Of course, everyone is living, everyone lives on the earth. The animals also are living, trees, plants, everything in this creation, in this universe is living, has life in it. But the question is, are we living a life worth living, a right living, a purposeful living, a meaningful living, or we are just living like any other living beings or living things? So, when this question comes up, the spiritual masters, the rishis, the yogis have confirmed it to us again and again from their experience, from their realization that we do live, but we do not know actually at the ordinary level the art and science of right living. Sri Aurobindo spoke once that the man is just living on the earth. We call ourselves modern man with all kinds of sophistication. We live our life. We claim to be modern. But he said, scratch this modern man and you will discover the primitive man inside. The point is, there is a beautiful verse in Sanskrit which says, Ahar Nidra Bhayamaithunancha Samanametat Pashubhir Narana. So, like the animals eat, sleep, they have fears, they have, their personal private relationship. This is common to man and the animal. But what actually makes the man stand out? What makes the man stand out? What is differentiating man from the animals, from the rest of the beings? It is the dharma. And what is the dharma of the man? The man's dharma is to rise above his ordinary consciousness and attain to a higher level of consciousness. Man cannot continue his life by fulfilling, by satisfying the animal instincts, animal impulses. He has to live a different kind of life. So, for that purpose, to heighten, to broaden, to deepen our ordinary limited consciousness, to expand our human man's consciousness from the man animal to the man human to the man divine. A process has been given to the humanity, and that process is yoga. It is through that, through the practice of that, that man can get rid of its limitations. Man can get rid of all its shortcomings and rise above to the heightened consciousness where he can realize the divine nature of himself. Yoga is all about transforming our ordinary nature to the divine nature, to realize the divine within ourselves, to manifest the divinity from within and in every aspect of our being, in every aspect of our work, in every movement. This being the case, can we do the yoga? Can everyone follow the path of yoga and start this work of transformation directly without any preparation? No. If we want to enter into the spirit of yoga, spirit of the yogic life, the dhyatmic jivan, the yogic jivan, if we truly want to transform our ordinary life into a divine life, we need to have a lot of preparation. Every system of yoga has suggested a lots of principles, lots of ways how one can prepare oneself to enter into the kingdom of yoga. And among all the yogis, among all the yoga shastras, this preparatory stage is very well defined, very well presented by none other than Maharshi Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras by providing the preparatory components, rules or codes, following which one can strengthen oneself, prepare oneself, become more and more conscious of oneself, and consciously enter into the kingdom of yoga. And those preparatory stages are known as Yama and Niyama. So the five Yamas and then five Niyamas. Of course, there are other shastras where there are a lot of discussions whether the Yamas have to be five, Niyamas have to be five or more. This is a different topic where different yoga shastras deal differently with this aspect of Yama and Niyama. But the standard acceptance, Patanjali has systematized the floating uh, various systems of yoga and then standardized it and has presented it through the Yoga Sutra, where we find this five yamas and five niyamas. And what are these? There are certain prohibitory aspects and there are certain recommendations that what we should do. The five yamas. So my whole purpose in this lecture is to explain these five yamas and niyamas from a very practical point of view and adding a little more values to these words, what do they mean? For example, like in Yama, we have ahimsa, very roughly translated as non-violence. And if we contemplate on this whole idea of non-violence, then we will find in various commentaries, various literature, various essays by different masters, different thinkers, different philosophers, many differing ideas about ahimsa. Is ahimsa mere physical non-violence? This is a question. Is physical non-violence possible on the earth at all? Complete non-violence, physical non-violence. Very interestingly, Sri Aurobindo answers this question and he says that a complete physical non-violence is not the law of nature on this planet. Because if you look at the Matsya Nyaya, the bigger fish eating the smaller fish. Can it be completely eliminated? Look at the vicious cycle. One is behind the other. Then there is something which is behind that. A complete and physical non-violence is an impossibility on this earth. Then what exactly is meant by non-violence here? Again, Srimad Bhagavad Gita is a very, very practical example of the true non-violence. Non-violence in a true sense. Where even the killing of enemies on the battlefield is considered to be ahimsa. Otherwise, the Gita will be treated as a book promoting himsa. But Gita's teaching is all about ahimsa. But what is the kind of ahimsa, non-violence, that we need to put into practice? And without this, any practice of yoga is not going to help. First, these elements have to be eliminated from within. This whole aspect of ahimsa, one has to grow more and more conscious of one's various parts of the being. But this is important. We think that not physically reacting to something or hurting someone, injuring someone is ahimsa. No. What about the ahimsa at our emotional level? What about ahimsa at the mental psychological level? What about ahimsa at the deeper levels of our being? One may not be acting out physically, but one may be extremely violent within oneself, which is more dangerous than physical violence. That completely harms the whole process of yoga, whole process of expanding the consciousness. So the true ahimsa has to be established not just at the physical level, but at each level of our being. At the thought level, mental, psychological level, at the emotional level, sensational level. at the various other deeper levels of our consciousness. So this preparation of Yama as ahimsa and well establishing itself within oneself gives a perfect entry into the kingdom of yoga. These are the keys to unlock the main doors of yoga to enter into that kingdom. Asteya. Asteya is non-stealing, but it is not mere non-stealing physically. There are people who steal the ideas of others. Emotionally, people get blackmailed. The stealing happens at many layers, but it is not just about stealing something, stealing some ideas, or stealing some physical object. When we are preparing ourselves for the yoga, here it means that we need to become free from all sense of greed and possession, whether it is one's own property or someone else's property, someone else's possession. Tena tyaktena bhunjita. There has to be this renunciation, inner renunciation, that one doesn't possess within oneself this sense of possession. Possessing the sense of possession itself is harmful. So one needs to become free from the sense of possession, having no greed on anything that lies outside. The moment the very thought of stealing something, possessing something, whether someone is seeing us or not seeing, whether we are under the surveillance or not, but this very idea of possessing something, making one's own, is to be eliminated. Otherwise, that becomes a hindrance on the path of yoga. So this is how you we purify the adhara. Aparigraha. Aparigraha is not to receive. Not to receive, usually it is translated as not receiving any gifts. So one may be eliminating this whole sense of possession from within, but one may become tempted if the person is, receiving gifts from others, things presented by others, that may over a period of time or the constant happening of that may, there is a possibility that it may bring back the sense of possession and greed again. So that is why one has to very consciously eliminate this part, not to have even any expectation that someone will give something, whether we are doing something. If something is offered, it's fine, but not to claim, not to expect, not to discuss about it. Is all these things come under aparigraha. There's a funny thing which I myself have experienced, that one guru, when something was brought to him, I was also present. So he said, I tell it, I share it with no offense to anyone. So he said, okay, like I don't receive gifts directly. You can give it, you can hand it over to my disciple. But this is not aparigraha. And that Guru mentioned that I don't receive things because I'm practicing aparigraha and I do not receive things directly, but you can hand it over to my disciple. So that means allowing the same thing through a back door, but not receiving directly. This is also pretension of having, practicing aparigraha. That very sense, very attachment should not be there. Even someone can receive things when one is actually advanced in this whole process of purification. One can receive things, yet is in aparigraha because one has eliminated that sense of possession, greed from within us. No attachment towards what is being received. No discussion about it. Just receive, forget. Only the advanced stage, at an advanced stage, one this can happen. But till then, consciously, one has to reject things which become hindrance on the path of progressing towards the realization of the divinity within, which is the core aim of yoga. So apart from ahimsa, asteya, aparigraha, I took it because they're very obviously negative. But then in Yama, one also needs to practice the Satya and Brahmacharya. Satya and Brahmacharya are not directly prohibitions, but what is meant here is that not to practice the asatya, not to allow the falsehood to take possession within oneself. Satya is truthfulness, and how to practice this truthfulness. What does it mean to be truthful? Is Satya Parayanata merely confined to speaking truth? If we analyze in a deeper sense, we will see that no. Honesty in words is extremely important. True truthfulness is far beyond the honesty in words. The true truthfulness, it encompasses alignment with oneself at various levels. Truthfulness is not merely about saying what is factually correct. It's about being authentic. It's about being consistent in every aspect of life. And in Sanskrit, there is a beautiful verse which says, Manasyekam vachasyekam karmanyekam mahatmanam manasyanyat vachasyanyat karmanyanyat duratmanam. What does this verse say? This verse says, all those who are great souls, all those who are deep into the practice of Satya, all those who have eliminated the falsehood from within themselves, they are the high spirited individuals who have aligned their thoughts, speech, action and they have embodied the truthfulness within themselves. Manasyeka, vachasyeka, karmanyeka. What they think, what they say, and what they do, there is a proper alignment in this. But all those who are Duratman, the followers of falsehood, not following the path of truthfulness, manasi anyat. They think something in mind, vachasya say something else, which has no connection with what is being thought, and karmanyanyat. But they work out something else, very different. So there is no harmony between their thoughts, speech, deeds. This is very, very contrary to the essence of truthfulness. Therefore, in the pursuit of truthfulness, we, the Sanatana Dharma, our Shastras, our Rishis, remind us again and again about what is the true truthfulness. Even if we need to speak truth, so what will be the way to express the truth? There's again a beautiful verse which says, Satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat, ma bruyat satyam apriyam, priyam chana anrutam bruyat, esha dharma sanatana. So it means one should speak the truth, speak what is pleasant. That truth has to be pleasant, and one need to avoid speaking the truth which is unpleasant. At the same time, which is pleasant yet false, one has to avoid that. This is the essence of Sanatana Dharma, which emphasizes the importance of balancing truth with kindness, consideration, situation, where to speak, how to present the truth. If we look at ordinarily, if we look at the reality, the ground reality, ordinarily, human consciousness often resists the truth and needs to be reminded through unpleasant realities. So while sometimes we do have to speak what is known as Gadwa Sach, unpleasant truth, while it seems very harsh, yet it serves as a necessary wake up call to align ourselves with the deeper truths of life. Therefore, Sanatana Dharma encourages us to evolve to a state where we can understand and speak the truth in a manner which is both pleasant and beneficial. Satya. Then there is another component in Yama, the fifth one, which is Brahmacharya. This word Brahmacharya, again, is translated and circulated and explained, interpreted as celibacy. This is not an absolutely right interpretation of the word or a complete interpretation of the word. Something very, very deep one needs to understand while dealing with the word brahmacharya. It is not mere celibacy. What it represents is brahmacharya, that it is a practice, it is a code of conduct again, which helps us realizing the divine, which helps us fulfilling this aspiration of manifesting the divinity within. If we look at the ancient practices, if we look at the contributions of the rishis, we find that our rishis knew that man is not separate from the universe. Like we have the Samudra Taranga Nyaya, the same way we are an integral part of this universe. And our ancient seers and sages also realized that an infinite energy, which they called it as Prakriti or Maya or Shakti, which is present everywhere in the world. And this infinite energy, it pours itself into every name and form. Without the presence of this, without the blessings of this Shakti, this infinite energy pouring itself into every name and form, nothing can move forward. Whether it is animal or man or plant or a cloud or any form. This is the energy. There is something in the as the foundation which exists as the energy. And each one of us, we are, uh, as you know, like how Sri Aurobindo describes in one of his writings, that each one of us is a dynamo into which waves of that energy have been generated and stored and are perpetually conserved, used up, and replenished. It is the same force which moves in the star and the planet, also moves in us. All our thoughts, actions, all these are mere its play. And this energy needs to be conserved, well taken care of within. And this is the basis of the operation of our intelligence, operation of our pranic energy, operation of everything. There is a beautiful writing by Sri Aurobindo called The Brain of India. And in the third part of this writing, Sri Aurobindo speaks in a very meticulous manner what is this brahmacharya. I'll take just 2 minutes to read out a passage, the most important passage on brahmacharya, then move to the explanation of the niyamas. Because this understanding of brahmacharya, which is one of the most important component in the Yama, Sri Aurobindo says that the practice of a brahmacharya is the first and foremost necessary condition of increasing the force within and turning it to such uses as may benefit the possessor or mankind. All human energy has a physical basis. And Sri Aurobindo says that the Europeans or the European materialism has mistaken this basis to be everything and confuse it with the source. See, one is the basis and one is the source. Sri Aurobindo says the source of life and energy is not material but spiritual. But the basis, the foundation on which the life and energy stand and work is physical. The ancient Hindus clearly recognized this distinction between Karana and Pratishtha, the North Pole and the South Pole of being. Earth or gross matter is Pratishtha. Brahman or the spirit is the Karana, Sri Aurobindo says. To raise up the physical to the spiritual is Brahmacharya. See how beautifully and profoundly Sri Aurobindo explains that it is not mere celibacy. To raise up the physical into the spiritual is Brahmacharya. For by the meeting of the two energy, which starts from one and produces the other, is the is enhanced and fulfills itself. Then Sri Aurobindo goes on explaining the whole science behind the practice of a brahmacharya, which is a long passage. So I recommend that all those who are viewing this can go to the book, the small, very small write-up by Sri Aurobindo called The Brain of India. It's available on the internet, and read this whole passage, beautiful passage. On one side, we give the metaphysical theory, but there is a, uh, psychological, physical, psychological explanation of this brahmacharya which Sri Aurobindo has provided in this writing, where he speaks about the various units. So he speaks about Retas, he speaks about Tejas, he speaks about Vidyut, he speaks about um, you know uh, the combination of all these things, like how one Shakti, he speaks of Ojas, so how each one is helping each other in their position, in their enhancement in the physical itself. So what turns and becomes Vidyut, what turns and becomes Tapas, what turns and becomes Ojas and Tejas. So the keywords which one finds in Sri Aurobindo's writing is Tapas, Tejas, Vidyut, Ojas, and the Brahmacharya increases this store of Tapas, Tejas, Vidyut, and Ojas. And the more we shall fill ourselves with utter energy for the works of the body, heart, and spirit. So that is why brahmacharya needs to be practiced not just in the brahmacharya ashram, because this is the only ashram, only thing, brahmacharya, which needs to be practiced in every ashram. For example, like a grihasthi also has to practice throughout life the brahmacharya. Otherwise, very difficult to remain as a true grihastha. A vanaprasthi has to maintain brahmacharya. A sannyasi has to maintain brahmacharya. The brahmacharya continues throughout life. So it is manifesting the spirit within oneself, realizing the divinity within oneself. Coming to the niyamas, so we have shaucha, we have santosha, tapa, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana are the niyamas. So shaucha, absolute purity needs to be maintained in every part of our being. There has to be purity in speech. There has to be purity in thought. There has to be purity in our emotions. There has to be purity in the adhara, in the body. So there is physical purity, mental purity, emotional purity. There is even psychic purity. There is integral purity. Purity in all sense needs to be maintained, the soldier. We have to have santosha, contentment. Tosha, santosha, perfect tosha. This santosha has to be natural to us. It is not a mere satisfaction with something at a certain point of time, in a certain circumstance, in a certain situation. But the true santosha is that one remains happy from within, happy in every part of one's being, whatever the situation may be. Whether there is food, there is wealth, this much or that much, it doesn't matter. But I am happy. That happiness has to be at every level, at every time, santosha. It must lead towards nitya truptata. So yadrucha lava santushta. Whatever comes to us, comes to the sadhaka, comes to the yoga practitioner, one who has decided to enter into the kingdom of yoga. So one must practice this. Whatever comes on the way, I'm happy. I'm not demanding. I'm not expecting less or more. The very expectation is to be eliminated. The very sense of possession needs to be eliminated. The very sense of happiness and joy needs to be increased and enhanced with it. Like one remains happy in all situations. Santosha. Tapah. Tapas is again a very important word, very important concept, very important idea. But tapas again is interpreted in a manner that creates a very different image when people hear about tapas. And it is by tapas everything can be achieved. There's a beautiful verse again which says, Yad dushkaram, yad durapam, yad durgam, yad chadustaram, tat sarvam tapasa prapyam, tapohi duratikram. So this is what is uh, said by uh, Manu. He says that everything, whatever is difficult to attain, whatever is difficult to gain, whatever is difficult to be crossed, whatever is difficult to do, everything can be achieved by tapas. But this tapas has not been interpreted properly or translated properly in order to give the right sense of it. In English, many people translate tapas as penance, which is actually in English, if we contemplate and gather from many dictionaries. So, penance is a punishment inflicted on oneself as an outward expression of repentance for wrongdoing, a sacrament in which a member of the church confesses sins to a priest and is given absolution. This is what is penance. So therefore, we should not translate the word tapas as penance. Tapas has its own meaning. That's why the words have to be understood in their root sense. So tapas is what? The word tapas, the root of which is tap, means to generate heat, to make warm, to shine out, to torment. Tapati. So based on the various root senses of the word tapas, it means the warmth or heat or any kind of energism, any kind of ascesis, austerity, of conscious force acting upon itself or its object. In a higher sense, the self awareness of the Absolute, the force of consciousness, when it is concentrated on itself and energized for action, it becomes tapas. So it is the warmth of the fire of aspiration, the flame of aspiration that is ever burning within every being. So doing tapasya or following tapas, pursuing tapas, is to feel this warmth and become aware of and intensify that fire of aspiration and act towards and energize oneself for achieving the highest goal of life. That is what is tapas. We have then swadhyaya. So Shaucha, Santosha, Tapa, Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya is again very roughly translated as self-learning, reading for oneself, or it is understood as a regular study of some sacred texts like the Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, or any other. So Swadhyaya is not confined to this meaning. It again has a deeper meaning we need to understand. So while following this, while preparing ourselves for entering into the kingdom of yoga, Swadhyaya helps. Which means Swadhyaya is a combination of Swa and Adhyaya. And if we contemplate on the word Adhyaya, which basically means a chapter, a lesson, or a lecture, but the word is a combination of Adhi and I, and then we have the word Adhyayana also coming from the same roots. So in a deeper sense, when we contemplate on the root sounds, root sense of it, Swadhyaya is Jnana Yajna, in which one creates a space in one's own consciousness for the forces which have to come through the process of reading text, or by observing its meaning silently, giving it a possibility to be fully expressed in terms of experience. This is Swadhyaya. So, Shaucha, Santosha, Tapah, Swadhyaya, and at the end it comes Ishvara, Pranidhana. We may be doing everything, but all our efforts, however intense it may be, however sincere it may be, if it doesn't have the God touch, if it doesn't have the touch of that grace, supreme grace, it will not be sustainable. It will not attain to its purnata. Ishvara Pranidhana. Now you see, Patanjali is not saying Ishvara Pujana. He is saying Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana is not worshipping God. Worshipping can be pujana, but pranidhana is not worship but adoration. The puja can involve so many things which are physical, like where you are offering the flower, you are offering, like the process of ritual. So one has to follow that process in the puja. But pranidhana is deep, that one has to adore the divine at every moment, in each and everything that one does. Like the Gita says, or in the Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna that, "O Arjuna, while fighting, take care that you never forget, even for a moment, my presence." The satat smarana shilata, the constant remembrance of the divine. To make the divine presence intense while doing something physical, in all our activities, in all our emotional movements, in all our mental psychological movements. The Ishvara has to be adored, he has to be invoked, he has to be remembered, he has to be worshipped silently within oneself. Here, Ishvara Pranidhana also indicates a kind of not external but interiorization, that one has to look within oneself and constantly invoke and seek the blessings of the divine to purify, to energize, to bring all the divine bounties at each state of life, at each layer of our life, in every movement of our life. So, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, shaucha, santosha, tapah, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana, these five yamas and five niyamas, when they are followed sincerely, intensely, regularly, without interruption, becomes a great preparation for entering into the kingdom of yoga. Without following the Yama Niyama, without practicing the Yama Niyama, it is extremely difficult to enter into the kingdom of yoga. So that is why Patanjali gives so much of importance to the practice of Yama and Niyama. So this is what I wanted to share with you all with regard to how do we put into practice this Yama and Niyama for the purification of our Adhara, for the enhancement of all the inner powers, the powers within. So then we become prepared, well prepared to enter into the kingdom of yoga and make our life beautiful, purposeful, meaningful, and realize the divinity within by going through the rest angas of yoga. Dhanyavad. And I thank the Mythic Society for giving me this opportunity to deliver this Professor Ketty Pandurangi Memorial Lecture on this very important day, the International Day of Yoga. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.
Namaste. On behalf of the Mythic Society and all the audience worldwide who are attending this lecture, I thank Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji for his enlightened talk on the topic Yama and Niyama, the guiding principles for a balanced life. Thank you very much, sir. I also thank all the participants who are participating from across the globe for this enlightened talk. And I'm very sure you are able to learn many new inputs. You are able to get many new inputs relating to this very great concept of Yama and Niyama on the day of International Yoga Day. Thank you, one and all, and namaste.